What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and today I want to talk a little bit about the PS4 Fallout 4 mod situation. First thing I want to say is this. If you hear anybody else saying that this is some kind of Bethesda Sony crap that is just like the PS3, they're absolutely factually wrong. This is nothing like that. The PS3 on a cell architecture with all of the different processors and all of the different situations there, and the Xbox 360 being a power PC situation, those were very hard to translate between the two. Here we have a situation where, other than memory allocation, a little bit of a GPU difference, and a little bit of a CPU difference, these are generically the same machines. But anyway, if you're seeing that, please ignore it. This is not what it's about. It's just simply about getting things to work on systems and consoles that we have never tried before. So, when it comes down to it, what happened? This morning, Bethesda basically said, yeah, you know that PS4 mod situation we told you guys would happen at some point? Well, it's going to be a farther some point. And there's sort of an indefinite at some point. We don't really know when. They do say that they're going to try to roll out a beta form of it for maybe some testers to check out. There's a couple issues here. The first I want to discuss are some of the technical issues. Mods use, and they stated this right in their update, mods use a lot of textures and sound effects and models and meshes from the PC version. These are high resolution, and over time, they can eat up a lot of processing power from these consoles. Now, one thing that surprised me, and I've talked about this in podcasts, is I was actually surprised the Xbox One with 30 mods, including variable weather and different characters and higher resolutions, was actually running very well. There's a video of people running a good number of mods, having a really good looking game, and it actually almost runs at the exact same frame rate, of course fixed, not that 1 frame per second we were getting on the Xbox One on day of release. So you have this situation where it's looking good on consoles, and this is really exciting to me personally because mods in the future, especially a well-curated mod situation like Bethesda, where they have a website you go to, blah, 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 it's very easy to do. I see the future being a really cool place. Unfortunately, the PS4 is having some issues. The first thing I want to cover is that they mentioned their proprietary sound format. Now, this has been done occasionally in consoles prior. We're assuming that the Xbox One, and I don't know which sound format they use, but most likely uses one of the Windows sound formats. And so what happens is translation isn't really needed. It's just played like a normal audio player within their game. Unfortunately, that's not the same with the PS4. Now, there's things that we know about the piracy, anti-piracy situations in both of these consoles, and one of them has been mentioned that it is most likely this proprietary audio format that is one of the ways in which you can handle piracy, and this is absolutely true. Usually what it requires whenever this is done is for a pirate to write a program that they figure out how to translate between the two. So let's say you wanted to mod the game, you would get a pirated copy of the game, you would then translate them to MP3, you do whatever adjustments you wanted, then you translate them back into whatever this proprietary format was, do some signage to make sure it looked legal, put it back into the game, and it would run. Well, unfortunately, that's not going to work for a legal game. You can't remove it all and put it back in. So what they're doing here is they're looking at sound processing. Now, that's unfortunate because what that induces is a CPU overhead. The CPU has to transcode in real time, and that is what Bethesda's talking about. If you see their update, they talk distinctly about that. You really don't want to use up any overhead, and let me be clear why. If there were overhead in these systems, we'd be seeing better frame rates and better, well, everything. There is no overhead in these systems. They have very clear defined details for, let's say, memory allocation. That memory allocation has to do a couple things. One, it has to load your application into the resident memory so that it can be displayed and it can play the game. But you additionally have to have some secondary memory that's set aside so that it can do things like record your game, go to the dashboard, and stuff like that. So what we have is this situation where there isn't a lot of overhead. There's a little bit as a safety margin, but we already knew when the PS4 was originally announced, and Guerrilla Games did a couple PowerPoints on this, they talked about how much resident memory they were able to use for their application. And it's actually a little bit smaller back then. It's increased now, but it was a little bit smaller back then than people assumed it would be. And we're probably seeing some kind of situation here as well. And so what happens is you have a problem where you're uploading all this mod data and you just don't have enough space for it. You can't bloat that executable and bloat that overall memory footprint on your system if you don't have the available memory. And so what happened is they also announced that, unfortunately, for now, they're asking everybody who's making PS4 mods to not go above 900 megs. Now, why do I say unfortunately, and I really mean that? The Xbox One's version can do 2 gigs. That's a 1,100 meg difference. That is massive. That's a difference in textures. That's hundreds of more songs if you have your little Pip-Boy radio running. That is a number of different things. So I'm really looking forward to the fact that Sony and Bethesda work on that and get it at least somewhat closer. Unfortunately, since we're seeing over a 100% increase, I'm not 100% they're going to be able to just get that to 2 gigs, but certainly more than 900 would be great, because a lot of mods are more than 900. They just are, and that's one of the problems. If hell, a lot of mods are over 2 gigs. So you have this situation where a lot of mod makers are just going to be like, well, then we're not going to worry about that, or you're going to get what's called a light version, which is fine, but usually there's a reason why there's a normal version and a light version, and that's because it just, well, doesn't look as good. So you have this situation where you've got this memory allocation, 900 megabytes. It's unfortunate. It's been delayed. And the sound file processing that they're going to have to do. It makes me a little nervous for something in the future, not Fallout. And that's Skyrim Remastered. And here's why I am a little bit nervous about this. Skyrim Remastered isn't just a remastered game where they're taking resolutions and they're turning them up, or taking textures and they're increasing resolution, or they're increasing their overall fidelity. What you're having here is Bethesda's actually adding little bits to the architecture. They're adding special effects, volumetric lighting, different water effects. They're doing a ton of stuff. That's going to eat up whatever overhead that's already there. Now, hopefully, because they're trying to get this for Fallout 4, they're preparing the same thing for the PS4 version. But if Sony has a larger footprint that they want to hold for their OS, and you just can't get any more for your application, unfortunately, I think when we move into Skyrim, we're going to see the same kind of situation. Hopefully nowhere near this massive, but this is what happens when you have 2 systems that inherently are somewhat the same hardware, but they're made by completely different groups of people who handle their OSs so differently. It's really unique when you think about it, because I still remember when these systems came out, how their OSs worked. One worked in one way, one was very, let's say, cut and dry, one was, tiles and all this crazy stuff. And each one has adjusted and changed as they've updated. But one thing that hasn't, other than one time, was the increase of the memory that was allowed for the main application on the PS4. So most likely, some of that memory allocation is for anti-piracy measures and other things like that, where maybe they're running something in the background. There could be all kinds of measures. I'm not sure what those are, because no one knows. Otherwise, there would be pirated games right now. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see. It's unfortunate for PS4 owners. I would say if you have both consoles and you have Fallout 4, and you were thinking about holding on and not, maybe starting up a new game with mods on the Xbox One, we just don't have any date right now. And I would say that, unfortunately, even if we do get a date, it certainly looks like they announced the 900 megabyte limit now to keep people informed of it. So I would say, most likely for now, your mods are probably best kept on the Xbox One until Bethesda can sort of figure out how they're going to handle all this. And I'm sure they will, at least in somewhat, bring up that support somewhat. So anyway, that's it for me. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And maybe if you get a chance, in the comments, talk about what your hopes are for the future in mods. Not even just Fallout 4, but what game would you like to see that's on the console that has mods? So anyway, that's it for me. Peace out.